Today in USA Fresh News, America wakes to a country on edge. In Utah, authorities confirmed conservative activist Charlie Kirk was shot and killed during a campus event, and investigators have launched a nationwide manhunt, now backed by a six-figure reward for tips leading to a conviction. The FBI and local police say the probe is moving quickly, as leaders across the spectrum condemn the attack and campuses reassess security. In Washington and beyond, policy fault lines sharpen. Debates over crime and immigration intensify while markets weigh the odds of a Fed rate cut against looming labor data revisions. Overseas flashpoints and climate extremes, from heat and drought in the west to storm risks in the southeast, continue to ripple through energy, prices, and daily life. We'll connect the dots with clear context and what it means for your wallet, community, and the road ahead.
So let's see, or listen. The United States finds itself in the middle of a week defined by grief, anxiety, and urgent questions about the stability of democratic life. The assassination of Charlie Kirk, founder of Turning Point USA, is not just another headline. It is the kind of rupture that forces a country to pause and re-examine its boundaries. At only 31 years old, Kirk had become one of the most recognizable conservative figures of his generation, and his killing during a campus event at Utah Valley University has turned him into both a symbol of political vulnerability and a flashpoint for a broader conversation about where America is headed. Witnesses describe the moment as almost cinematic in its horror. One instant, the auditorium was filled with the kind of raucous debate that defined Kirk's brand, and the next, chaos erupted when a gunman's bullet struck him in the neck. Students screamed, staff rushed to provide aid, and within minutes the news had spread nationwide. Law enforcement officials confirmed Kirk's death and immediately framed the attack as an apparent act of political violence, a characterization that sends shivers through a nation already struggling with bitter divisions. The search for justice has moved at a remarkable pace. Authorities have detained a suspect but remain cautious in their public statements, noting that motives are still under investigation. To underscore the seriousness of the case, federal investigators have placed a $100,000 reward on the table for information leading to a conviction. That figure is not only practical but symbolic. It conveys the urgency of restoring public trust after a political assassination. Analysts note that such rewards are typically used in organized crime or terrorism cases, and their presence here underscores how seriously authorities view the need for accountability. Political leaders, from the White House to state capitals, are scrambling to respond. President Biden delivered remarks calling the killing an attack on democracy itself, while emphasizing that violence must never replace debate. On Capitol Hill, lawmakers from both parties issued rare joint statements condemning the act. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer urged Americans not to allow hatred to metastasize into violence, while House Speaker Mike Johnson described Kirk's murder as a chilling reminder that free speech is fragile if security is absent. In Utah, Governor Spencer Cox declared the attack a political assassination and pledged full cooperation with federal investigators. The country has experienced moments like this before. The assassination of Robert F. Kennedy in 1968 and the shooting of Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords in 2011 remain etched in memory, but political assassinations in modern America have been rare. That rarity, however, only intensifies the sense of shock when they do occur. Security experts argue that the attack represents a tipping point for how universities, advocacy groups, and grassroots movements handle safety at public events. Many institutions have already begun reviewing security protocols, considering measures like metal detectors, controlled entry points, and surveillance enhancements for even small gatherings. Beyond the immediate investigation, Kirk's death has unleashed a storm of reflection on his role in American politics. For supporters, he was a voice of resistance against what they viewed as progressive dominance in academia and culture. For critics, he was a provocateur who thrived on confrontation and division. but even those critics are acknowledging the tragedy of his death. Several progressive student groups that once protested TPUSA events have now issued statements of solidarity, recognizing that political violence threatens all sides. The unifying theme across these responses is a chilling realization. If words can no longer be contested safely, democracy itself is at risk. The reverberations reach far beyond Utah. On social media, the conversation has quickly splintered into competing narratives. Some corners of the internet frame the assassination as proof of escalating left-wing extremism, while others speculate about personal motives or conspiracies. The FBI has urged Americans not to spread unverified claims, warning that misinformation only deepens polarization and hampers the investigation. Still, the speed of speculation reflects a broader problem. Americans no longer just react to news. They shape and weaponize it in real time, often before facts are confirmed. Meanwhile, the assassination has collided with other pressing domestic crises, amplifying the sense of unease. In Memphis, President Trump authorized the deployment of the National Guard to address surging violent crime, a move that has reignited debates over federal versus local authority in policing. Civil rights groups warn that militarization of city streets risks escalating tensions, while supporters argue that residents deserve protection when crime spirals out of control. Memphis residents express a mix of relief and suspicion, some grateful for reinforcements, others concerned about what it means for civil liberties. Immigration, too, has returned to the spotlight. ICE's Operation Midway Blitz in Chicago led to dozens of arrests, targeting individuals with prior deportation orders and alleged ties to organized crime. Supporters hailed the crackdown as a defense of law and order, but immigrant rights advocates condemned it as heavy-handed and disruptive to communities. Businesses in agriculture and hospitality, already struggling with labor shortages, warn that such operations could worsen economic instability. For many families in Chicago, the raids weren't just policy. They were lived experience, a sudden rupture of ordinary life. And then there is the economy, where fragility hides beneath the surface of record highs. Wall Street has been buoyed by hopes of a Federal Reserve rate cut, with all three major indexes recently closing at historic peaks. But upcoming revisions to payroll data could change the picture dramatically. Analysts warn that job growth may have been overstated by nearly 1 million positions. If true, the correction would not only shake investor confidence, but also reverberate through households considering mortgages, car loans, or business expansions. The difference between optimism and anxiety in markets often comes down to a few data points, and this week may deliver those shocks. Overlaying all these issues is the drumbeat of climate extremes. Along the Pacific coast, scientists are monitoring a marine heat wave with water temperatures up to 7 degrees above average. The phenomenon has already triggered harmful algal blooms, disrupted fisheries, and destabilized ecosystems. Farmers in Oregon are reporting crop losses tied to both drought and heat stress, raising alarms about food supply and prices. For everyday Americans, climate change is no longer abstract. It shows up at the grocery store checkout line, in rising utility bills, and in the unpredictability of seasonal weather. Taken together, these stories sketch a nation in a moment of compounded stress. The assassination of Charlie Kirk raises existential questions about safety in political life. Crime and immigration enforcement test the balance between security and civil liberties. Markets wobble between exuberance and fragility. Climate extremes demand adaptation in real time. Through it all, the American public is left grappling with the same haunting question. How resilient is democracy when each new crisis seems to cut deeper than the last? The United States awoke today under the weight of a political shock that has eclipsed almost every other headline: the assassination of Charlie Kirk, founder of Turning Point USA. His death at just 31 years old is not only a personal tragedy for his family, friends, and supporters, but a national reckoning about the state of American politics and the risks of polarization spiraling into violence. The circumstances surrounding his killing and the investigation that has followed are being treated with the same gravity reserved for the rare but devastating moments when political speech is silenced by a bullet rather than answered with words. Kirk was addressing students and community members at Utah Valley University when the gunfire erupted. Witnesses describe a moment of confusion, then terror, as a gunman fired from an elevated position. The bullet struck Kirk in the neck, cutting his life short almost instantly. The auditorium, meant to host debate and ideas, became the scene of chaos and grief. The FBI has confirmed that the incident is being investigated as a politically motivated act of violence, with a $100,000 reward now offered for information that leads to the suspect's conviction. This bounty underscores the urgency with which law enforcement is pursuing leads, but it also highlights the national importance of the case. The White House issued a solemn statement, calling the assassination an attack not only on one man, but on democracy itself. President Biden urged restraint, imploring Americans to reject the temptation of responding with rhetorical escalation. "Violence must never be the answer," he said. Congressional leaders on both sides of the aisle echoed that sentiment, with a rare joint resolution already under discussion to condemn the assassination and reaffirm the country's commitment to free speech. Such moments of bipartisan agreement have grown increasingly rare in Washington, but the gravity of this act seems to have briefly united the nation's political class. Still, the reactions from across the political spectrum reveal deep divisions in interpretation. Republican figures framed Kirk's death as a direct assault on conservative voices, warning that political persecution has crossed into bloodshed. Democrats, while openly condemning the violence, emphasized that the tragedy should not become fuel for further division. The ideological fault lines remain, even as the grief is shared. Advocacy groups that once opposed Kirk's politics have issued cautious but heartfelt statements of solidarity, acknowledging that political violence, no matter the target, represents a threat to all. The resonance of Kirk's assassination lies not only in the act itself, but in who he was and what he represented. Born in Illinois in 1993, Charlie Kirk built Turning Point USA into a sprawling conservative youth movement that reshaped campus politics. His skill in leveraging social media, organizing large conferences, and framing cultural conflicts made him a household name among young conservatives and a prominent ally of Donald Trump. To supporters, he was a warrior for free speech and a champion for students who felt sidelined in academia. To critics, he embodied a brand of politics that thrived on confrontation, viral clashes, and polarizing rhetoric. Either way, his presence was impossible to ignore. The images of his final moments, now circulating on social media, have intensified public mourning and anger. Students who attended the Utah Valley University event describe a surreal whiplash, from energized debate to desperate screams within seconds. Grainy cell phone footage, replayed across television screens, has turned the assassination into a collective national memory almost instantly. Parents, students, and ordinary citizens alike are asking the same uneasy question. If this can happen in a university auditorium, where can anyone feel safe engaging in politics? Law enforcement's manhunt for the shooter has already taken on national dimensions. The FBI has released limited details, but officials confirm that the suspect appears to have acted deliberately, targeting Kirk specifically. Though authorities have urged the public not to speculate on motive, partisan narratives are spreading online. Some far-right commentators have pointed fingers at progressive activism, while left-wing voices have raised alarms about potential extremist infiltration or false flag conspiracy theories. Authorities are pushing back against this wave of speculation, warning that misinformation could hinder the investigation. What is clear is that the repercussions extend far beyond Utah. Across the country, universities are reassessing security measures for public events. Nonprofits, advocacy groups, and religious organizations are calling consultants to review safety protocols. Some are already considering whether metal detectors, armed security, or even restricted access are now unavoidable at gatherings that once prided themselves on openness. The very notion of public discourse is being tested. Can Americans still gather for debate without fearing violence? Kirk's life story is now being revisited with renewed intensity. From a suburban upbringing in Illinois to becoming one of the most recognizable conservative activists of his generation, his trajectory reflected both the power of grassroots organizing and the sharp edges of America's culture wars. His critics often accused him of stoking division, but even those same critics now acknowledge the tragedy of his violent death. His allies, meanwhile, vow that his work will continue, framing him as a martyr for the cause of free expression and conservative youth mobilization. Political assassinations are rare in modern America, but history shows their enduring impact. The killing of Robert F. Kennedy in 1968 reshaped the Democratic Party and altered the trajectory of that election. The shooting of Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords in 2011, though she survived, reignited debates about gun control and political rhetoric. Charlie Kirk's death, occurring in an era of heightened polarization and instantaneous digital amplification, could mark another inflection point, one whose consequences are still unfolding. The ripple effects are also being felt globally. International media have picked up the story, framing it as evidence of deepening instability in American politics. Allies abroad express concern that if political violence is rising in the U.S., the implications for democratic resilience worldwide could be profound. Autocratic regimes, on the other hand, have seized the moment to criticize American governance, pointing to the assassination as evidence of dysfunction. As Americans mourn and debate, law enforcement continues its search, with the $100,000 reward offering both incentive and a signal. No stone will be left unturned. The public is being asked to provide tips, with assurances that anonymity will be protected. Yet even as investigators gather evidence, the country wrestles with the broader meaning of what happened in Orem, Utah. This was not just the silencing of a voice, but a moment that forces a question about whether political violence is becoming a new, frightening norm.
Sports. This week in American sports has been a study in drama, resilience, and the unpredictable magic that keeps fans glued to their screens. From the NFL gridirons to Major League Baseball's playoff races and college football's bold surprises. The past few days have shown how sport is both entertainment and a mirror of larger national themes. The NFL provided one of its most surprising spectacles as the Kansas City Chiefs, defending Super Bowl champions, were stunned in São Paulo, Brazil. Playing in front of a roaring international crowd, Patrick Mahomes and his high-powered offense could not overcome the Los Angeles Chargers, who emerged with a 27-21 victory. Justin Herbert threw for over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns, cementing his role not just as the Chargers' leader, but as one of the league's brightest stars. The victory was more than a notch in the standings. It was proof that the NFL's international expansion strategy has teeth, with fans in Brazil embracing the spectacle and showing that American football's reach now stretches far beyond its borders. Economically, the league's gamble is paying off, as merchandise sales and broadcast deals tied to the Brazil matchup are expected to bring in record revenues. Back home, another NFL thriller unfolded as the Pittsburgh Steelers edged out the New York Jets in a 34-32 nail-biter, but the drama did not end at the final whistle. Safety Deshaun Elliott suffered a painful MCL sprain, forcing the Steelers to act quickly. Within hours, they signed veteran Jabril Peppers to plug the defensive gap. The move sent a strong message: the Steelers will not let injuries derail their playoff push. Fans saw the signing as both pragmatic and symbolic, a testament to a franchise that refuses to quit, no matter the setback. Meanwhile, the Green Bay Packers sought to stabilize their backfield by signing Pierre Strong Jr. to their practice squad. With injuries mounting, the Packers' gamble on Strong highlights how NFL teams constantly play chess, adjusting rosters week to week to maintain momentum. The New York Giants, however, faced a grimmer outlook after losing linebacker Micah McFadden to a foot injury. In the already competitive NFC East, McFadden's absence threatens to weaken a defense that has struggled to keep pace with rivals. Major League Baseball is heating up with September's playoff races. The Texas Rangers ignited hope among fans with a crucial 5-0 victory over the Milwaukee Brewers. Michael Hillman delivered the performance of his life, hitting a grand slam and adding an RBI double. Jacob Latz dominated from the mound, pitching 6 shutout innings. The win kept the Rangers' postseason hopes alive and energized a fanbase hungry for October baseball. Meanwhile, the Chicago Cubs pushed their record to 81-63, strengthening their postseason odds. Historic rivals like the New York Yankees and Boston Red Sox continue to claw for survival in the American League's crowded wildcard picture, proving once again why baseball in September is unlike any other month in the sport. College football, too, made headlines. Colorado head coach Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, surprised fans by elevating third-string quarterback Ryan Staub to starter after his impressive performance in a 31-7 victory over Delaware. Staub threw 2 touchdowns and commanded the field with poise, capturing national attention. Sanders' bold decision to reward performance over reputation epitomizes his disruptive style of leadership. For Colorado fans, it was a moment of pride. For the rest of the college football world, it was a reminder that even storied programs can reinvent themselves with the right risks. Taken together, these stories reveal a common thread: resilience. Whether it's Herbert's brilliance abroad, Hellman's breakout in Texas, the Steelers' fast roster moves, or Colorado's bold gamble, sports this week reflected the same qualities Americans crave in broader life: adaptation, hope, and the thrill of the unexpected.
Weather. Across the United States this week, weather is once again telling a story of extremes: parched heat in the west, volatile storms in the southeast, and crisp seasonal transitions in the Midwest and Northeast. Each region's forecast underscores how climate conditions ripple into health, economics, and daily choices. In the West, California, Nevada, and Arizona continue to endure relentless heat. Temperatures are soaring well above seasonal averages, pushing soil moisture to record lows and raising wildfire risks even before the traditional peak of fire season. Local officials are urging residents to update evacuation plans and keep emergency kits ready. For many families, the air quality threat is as immediate as the flames. Smoke from smaller blazes is already drifting across cities, complicating life for children, the elderly, and those with respiratory issues. Farmers face an even sharper dilemma. Extreme heat not only endangers crops, but also threatens the health of agricultural workers. Lower productivity, higher labor costs, and mounting insurance premiums are all part of the cascade of challenges. The memory of devastating September wildfires from recent years looms over communities, shaping a tense readiness that is now routine. The Midwest and Northeast, by contrast, are enjoying a gentler season. Autumn is beginning to settle in, bringing cooler nights and crisp mornings. Farmers are finding conditions ideal for harvesting corn and soybeans, with drier fields making it easier for machinery to operate. City dwellers, relieved by the break from summer humidity, are flocking to parks and outdoor events. Yet, even here, challenges persist. Rapid shifts in temperature can exacerbate asthma and other respiratory conditions, prompting public health advisories. Energy providers are carefully balancing the transition from high summer demand for cooling to the approaching need for winter heating. This balancing act translates into fluctuating utility bills, a reminder that even mild seasonal changes ripple into economic concerns for millions of households. In the Southeast, unsettled skies dominate. Scattered thunderstorms fueled by tropical moisture continue to drench parts of Florida and the Carolinas. September is historically the peak of the Atlantic hurricane season, and while no major storm is currently bearing down on the coast, meteorologists caution that conditions could change quickly. For coastal communities, every system on the radar sparks both vigilance and anxiety. Even moderate flooding disrupts tourism, commerce, and local infrastructure. For small businesses, particularly in the hospitality sector, each weather update doubles as an economic forecast. Insurance providers, too, are bracing for claims. Even near-miss storms can trigger billions in costs due to flooding and wind damage. On the Pacific coast, an alarming marine heat wave is reshaping both ecosystems and weather. Sea surface temperatures are running as much as 7 degrees above average. This anomaly has fueled harmful algal blooms, disrupted fishing patterns, and left coastal communities facing financial strain. Scientists note that the warming waters are not just an ecological concern, but also a driver of unusual coastal weather, muggy nights, erratic winds, and heightened storm activity. For communities dependent on fishing and tourism, these anomalies are more than nuisances. They are existential challenges to local economies. Taken together, these diverse weather patterns emphasize a central reality. Climate is no longer a distant conversation, but an immediate force in American life. Families are making choices about whether to keep children indoors due to smoke. Farmers are adjusting harvest schedules to the rhythm of shifting temperatures. Businesses are recalculating costs as storms disrupt operations. And policymakers face urgent questions about infrastructure resilience, energy capacity, and disaster preparedness.